One, is it deployment dodging? Is it stolen valor? Is it a vice presidential candidacy imploding? Or have Kamala Harris and Tim Walz risen in popularity to the point of being the favorite? Two of America's badass warriors, Navy SEALs, Bill Brown and Mitch Aguiar, join me today here on the Will Cain Show to break down Tim Walz's military story and Saturday's New York City Navy SEAL swim. 3, August 8th, 2023, Lahaina, Maui, burns to the ground. 1 year later, August 8th, 2024, thousands paddle out into the ocean in remembrance, and I take you last week inside the streets of Lahaina, the burned out remnants of Front Street, today here on the Will Cain Show. It is the Will Cain Show, streaming live at foxnews.com, on the Fox News YouTube channel, the Fox News Facebook page, and always on demand wherever you get your audio entertainment. Just hit subscribe at Apple or Spotify. You can listen to the Will Cain Show whenever and however you like. Or if you're watching right now on YouTube, just hit subscribe. There's a little button in the text description underneath this live stream. That way you can hang out with the Will Cain Show every Monday through Thursday, live at 12 o'clock Eastern Time. You can even jump into the comments section and join the conversation, join the community, join the militia here on the Will Cain Show. It is go time on Saturday. It is green light. It is time to jump into the Hudson. There have been thunderstorms and rains all week in New York City, leaving the New York City Navy SEAL swim of 2024 in doubt, on the rocks, floating away up the Hudson or into the Atlantic. But the email as of yesterday is that 250 some odd patriots, some 150 NYPD, New York Fire Department, New Jersey State Police, first responders, and some 60-odd Navy SEALs will dive into the Hudson, swim 3 miles, stop 3 times, do 300 push-ups, do 66 pull-ups, and carry flags to the streets of downtown Manhattan with the blaring siren of fire trucks into ground zero. And the water? Well, the water is fine, my friends. Jump on in. That's the latest email I got yesterday. Despite rains, despite runoff, despite horrible videos of floods in the New York City subway system, the bacteria levels are tolerable in the Hudson River. We'll find out come Saturday if I host Fox and Friends Weekend on Sunday morning with a third arm or one eye, or superhero powers that I previously did not know due to radioactivity in the waters. We'll find out if everything was fine. Bill Brown, the organizer of the New York City Navy SEAL swim, who swam in those Hudson rivers dozens of times, and is pretty normal, fairly normal. I mean, like on the bandwidth of normalcy, he's probably trending towards less abnormal. Will join us here today on the Will Cain Show, along with his buddy, also American hero, Mitch Aguiar. By the way, Mitch went viral just a few weeks ago, just about a month ago, because he jumped in the MMA ring with big-time Trump supporter and big-time MMA fighter Sean Strickland. And look, by the looks of the video, Mitch took a beating from a professional fighter. So I want to ask Mitch about that today, a little bit later here on the Will Cain Show. But we've got a lot to get to today, including the perhaps imploding candidacy of vice presidential candidate Tim Walz. Could it be an anchor that sinks Kamala Harris? Or is it the beginning of normies, of low-information voters, of a campaign run on vibes, taking the lead over J.D. Vance and Donald Trump? Let's get to that with story number 1. According to a new article at foxnews.com, Kamala Harris has taken a 4-point lead over Donald Trump in a favorability rating conducted in a poll by Marquette University. And I'll read now from this poll. It says the poll conducted July 24th to August 1st, surveyed 879 registered voters from across the country, and it advertised a margin of error of 4.1%. This favorability rating poll shows that just over the last 2 weeks, the candidacy of Harris, according to normies' popular conception of these two candidates, has taken a big rise in popularity. It reflects what we've all talked about, that this enthusiasm, this honeymoon period, has been a period of a golden age for Kamala Harris. Now, we all understand that the election is going to come down to a few swing states, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, and national averages and national favorability ratings only have so much value in predicting the outcome of the presidential election in November of 2024. But what it does reflect is that there's a campaign with, of course, Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, but within the mainstream media to turn Kamala Harris from really one of the most disrespected and unappreciated and unpopular vice presidents in history to the second coming of Barack Obama, to the savior of America, to the most charming woman in the United States. And it's working, not just reflected in these polls, it's working when you start listening. You just listen to, well, I guess what you would call normies. Let me give you Colin Cowherd, sports host of The Herd on FS1.
Americans are much more united than anybody on their iPhone would acknowledge, but that's hard to sell. We really all want the same things, but we watch different news channels for it. But people are tired of the angst. This weekend, I turned on CNN. Didn't plan to, but they had a Kamala Harris special. It was like 2 hours. I didn't plan to watch it. But what I noticed between her and the other guy running is she smiled a lot. She was happy. She laughed. It wasn't constant finger pointing and grievance. And I found myself sitting there for 2 hours. It was kind of uplifting.
I'm being somewhat generous to a man I slightly know and would describe as having a relationship that is somewhat friendly. I'm being somewhat generous by calling Cowherd a normie. I mean, look, Colin is extremely wealthy and he lives in Manhattan Beach and he's surrounded by people who would consider themselves among the 1% and are among the 1%. And I think in a world where, being cool is more important than being right. And yet he still represents, I think, a point of view that exists outside of those who consume on a regular basis news, politics. I mean, you're tempted to, in somewhat of a derisive manner, say this is low information, but it's also in that way normal. Most people aren't plugged in to the latest thing coming across their Twitter scroll, and maybe not even, watching Jesse Waters Primetime at night or the Will Cain Show at 12 o'clock Eastern time on foxnews.com. So they let the news cycle wash over them. And if you let the news cycle wash over you and you prioritize being cool and you don't prioritize being someone who digs their rudder into the sea, who digs their rudder into the waters to hit the currents and guide the direction of your own boat, if you're just willing to let yourself sail according to the prevailing cool and popular winds, I can see how you'd come away with, oh, that's positive. That's joyful. I mean, that's literally the line that they're using, Walz and Harris and the media. And I think it's a calculated line designed to declaw the criticism of Kamala Harris's laugh. I mean, you've heard Kamala Harris's laugh, and most likely you haven't enjoyed Kamala Harris's laugh. Everybody seems to cringe when Kamala Harris shows joy, but there's an effort to turn that into positivity. And I can see, by the way, when someone criticizes the direction of the country and says, by the way, we're going to lose everything that made America exceptional, that you're coming from a place of negativity. Criticism is inherently negative. And if you're criticizing the current administration, which in my humble estimation deserves big criticism, then that can come off as negative. And that can, in effect, paint this election between joy and anger, between negativity and positivity. And that can work on a normie sailing according to the winds he has no control over without digging his rudder in. That can work on the normie to define an election. But you have to understand that you're not even the captain of your own boat, that there's someone else blowing the winds. And those winds are ill, my friends. They will have you believing in an alternate reality. They'll have you believing in propaganda. They'll have you believing a lie. Joe Biden, this weekend, again, putting out one of the most fact-checked and debunks lies about Donald Trump.
Are you confident that there will be a peaceful transfer of power in January 2025?
If Trump wins, no, I'm not confident at all. I mean, if Trump loses, I'm not confident at all. He means what he says. We don't take him seriously. He means it. All the stuff about if we lose, there'll be a bloodbath. It'll have to be a stolen election. Look what they're trying to do now in the local election districts where people count the votes. They're putting people in place in states that they're going to count the votes, right?
Donald Trump did not say, if we lose, there will be a bloodbath. Donald Trump did not call white supremacists very fine people. Donald Trump did not call Nazis very fine people. The truth is readily available. The fact checks have been conducted. These lies have been debunked. And yet, they continue to be repeated. Makes me wonder why. You know, if you polled people out there on the left, do they believe that Donald Trump has called for a bloodbath should he lose the election? He was talking about the economy. He was saying if Democratic policies, if the policies of the Biden-Harris administration continued, it would be a bloodbath on the auto industry. He then extrapolated it into it would be a bloodbath for the economy. He wasn't calling for a bloodbath as insinuated by Joe Biden on the streets of America if he loses the presidency. But I think that if you polled those on the left, I don't know what percentage would believe that he's called for a bloodbath, that he's called Nazis very fine people. I don't know how many even care to know the truth, that even if they're made aware that it's a lie, they'd rather believe the lie than hear the truth. And that's weird. So if this election comes down to vibes, if it comes down to positivity, if it comes down to joy versus negativity, if it comes down to happiness versus anger, then you're going to get away with one campaign saying the other guys are weird and that motivating you to the poll. I'll give you. I don't think J.D. Vance is the most normal dude I've ever seen. But I don't think the fact that he manspreads on the Nelk Boy podcast makes him weird, as insinuated by Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. I don't think Trump is exactly normal, but I think that's not weird. I think Donald Trump is exceptional and has been in every way in his life. Exceptional doesn't have to mean waving pom-poms. It doesn't have to always be positive. There can be exceptionally negative if you feel so inclined. But he's never been normal, and that's part of his appeal. He's represented aspiration. He's represented achievement. He's represented real estate success. He has represented the art of the deal. So if you want to call all that in a negative light weird, just know that there are millions of Americans who see all that same abnormalcy as aspirational. This versus if we're doing a ledger, if we're doing a assets and liabilities balance, this versus a tandem in Walz and Harris who have advocated for boys playing in girls' sports, who've put tampons in the boys' restroom, who've earned the nickname Tampon Timmy. I don't know. I think that's kind of weird. So in the end, the question is for all of us, Is this dichotomy, is this choice you're being given, positive and negative, normal versus weird, is it real or is it phony? I would suggest to you, it's about as real as Tim Walz's war hero status. Tim Walz, vice presidential candidate under Kamala Harris, served for 24 years in the United States military, Army National Guard. I appreciate Tim Walz's service to this country. But one thing I've been made aware, I've been made clear by friends of mine, whether or not that's Joey Jones, a Marine who lost both of his legs, Marine EOD tech lost both of his legs in Afghanistan, or my friend and co-host on Fox and Friends, Pete Hegseth, who served both in Afghanistan and Iraq with the United States Army, is you do not embellish your record. You simply do not say you have done things you did not do in the service of your country. And that's exactly the allegation now against Tim Walz. Tim Walz has said he was a command master sergeant. I am far from an expert on military rank and title. My understanding is in order to earn that title, you can be given it provisionally and then earn it through your service over the ensuing years. But Tim Walz elected to retire from the United States Army before being deployed to a war theater in Iraq and Afghanistan, thus negating his titular promotion to Command Master Sergeant. So he shouldn't be putting that on his bio, and yet he is. That, according to various accounts, is or is not a grievous sin. Is or is not some form of stolen valor. But Tim Walz has said that he wants to, for example, ban weapons he carried into war. He has said that he deployed in support of Operation Enduring Freedom. He has created an image that he is a warfighter. Now, I'll leave it to my guest coming up in just a moment here on the Will Cain Show if serving in the military is the same as being a warfighter. But Tim Walz did not fight in Iraq. Tim Walz did not fight in Afghanistan. He did not deploy to Operation Enduring Freedom, the war in Afghanistan. He deployed in support of that mission to Italy. Tim Walz deployed to Italy, to Europe, and most likely did not, as a Command Master Sergeant, carry around a weapon of war through the streets of Rome. So the point is, there was a time when this type of embellishment would have almost, swift-boated a campaign. I remind you of John Kerry. There was a time when this would inspire some shame. There is a time now when it has inspired some outrage from fellow service members. But the main takeaway for me is this embellishment, this image that he wants to create about who he is, despite a reality that deserves its own applause, deserves its own praise, serving 24 years in the military. There's a need to embellish it to get you to believe something more about Tim Walz. This is all about whether or not it's phony, it's fake to laugh like Kamala Harris, to laugh, as I'll remind you, like this. Slow on the draw.
Yeah.
On the Will Cain Show. Is it phony to think of this election as joy versus anger? Is it phony to think of this election as positive versus negative? Is it phony to think this is all about and can be all about vibes? Is it fake to see a favorability poll that now puts Kamala Harris and Tim Walz 4 points above Donald Trump? Is it phony to take one of the most disrespected and unappreciated vice presidents in history and within a 3-week period turn her into the savior of American happiness? Is it all phony, and can we all come back to what is real? From Tim Walz's military service to what this election should truly be about, your pocketbook, our economy, our national security. Can we talk about? Can we vote on? Can we care about, for once, what is real? Let's ask two Navy SEALs, Bill Brown and Mitch Aguiar, next on The Will Cain Show.
Kudlow on Fox Business is now on the go for podcast fans. Download the Kudlow Show podcast every weekday at foxbusinesspodcasts.com. Kudlow covers the latest headlines and business trends with an emphasis on the financial impact facing households and businesses across the country. Listen to interviews with key business newsmakers. The Kudlow podcast will be available on the go after the show every weekday at foxbusinesspodcasts.com or wherever you download your favorite podcasts.
Streaming now on Fox Nation, a new season of Duck Family Treasure.
It's treasure time.
The Robertsons are back.
Duck hunt, treasure hunt, finally go.
Tell the ducks we coming.
For their biggest,
You gotta cut a squirrel in half.
beeping season ever.
Go big or go home.
All new episodes.
Looking at what we find doesn't tell the story.
One unforgettable season.
When you see how we find it, it'll ignite the engine.
My hand is shaking.
A new season of Duck Family Treasure, streaming now on Fox Nation. Sign up at foxnation.com.
Kudlow on Fox Business is now on the go for podcast fans. Download the Kudlow Show podcast every weekday at foxbusinesspodcasts.com. Kudlow covers the latest headlines and business trends with an emphasis on the financial impact facing households and businesses across the country. Listen to interviews with key business newsmakers. The Kudlow podcast will be available on the go after the show every weekday at foxbusinesspodcasts.com or wherever you download your favorite podcasts.
You know, speaking of what's normal versus weird, what is within the mainstream and what is weird? Old colleague of mine at ESPN, Trey Wingo, tweeted out that Harrison Butker, kicker for the Kansas City Chiefs, just received a new something like $7 million a year kicking contract with the Kansas City Chiefs. And it just goes to show, according to Wingo, that you can get away with all manner of weirdness as long as you perform at your job. Many point out, what are you talking about? What weirdness? He tweeted out the following. The Harrison Butker extension, making him the highest paid kicker, underscores the inherent truth in the NFL that the better you are at the job, the more the team is willing to put up with, pure and simple. Now, our friend Bobby Burak tweeted out the following response to that. Hey, Wingo, how come you never make these statements when the NFL teams extend woman beaters or violent criminals? You're more worried about Harrison Butker than his teammates crashing in to a young family while drag racing? Trey Wingo, by the way, as Tinfoil Pat, one of my producers, said, didn't realize, but it's true, is 2 cocktails away from Keith Olbermann. But just goes to show, in the world that we're supposed to believe is normal, it's weird to believe it's okay for women to choose to raise a family, to prioritize your kids over your career, which is all that Harrison Butker ever said. It's all that he ever asked in his speech to the Benedictine College. What's normal? I think Harrison Butker. What's weird? Trey Wingo. It is the Will Cain Show, streaming live at foxnews.com, on the Fox News YouTube channel, the Fox News Facebook page, terrestrial radio, coast to coast, market to market, on demand, Apple, Spotify. Hit subscribe. Jump into the comment section and hit subscribe on YouTube. Joining me now, 2 real American heroes and patriots. 2 former Navy SEALs, Bill Brown and Mitch Aguiar, here on the Will Cain Show. What's up, fellas?
What's up, Will? How you doing, bro?
Hey, how you doing? Thanks for having us.
I'm really glad to have you both. You know, Mitch, we didn't get to talk last year. You were assigned personal security detail to Pete Hegseth. I had a different set of badasses to shadow me throughout the Navy SEAL swim. And I understand Bill's assigned Robert Sweetman to me again on land. So I expect him full in flak jacket, head on a swivel during the run. So does that mean, Mitch, you're swimming with me? Are you my water bodyguard?
I'm not sure I could keep up with you, but... but yeah, no, I'm there.
I didn't see where Mitch came in on the swim. I'll be honest with you, not as much training for me this year. So I'm not sure I'm going to be out front.
We'll hold rear security.
I want to get into Tim Walz and in the New York City Navy SEAL swim just a minute here with you, Bill. But I got one more question for Mitch. I got him because I got to come out of the gates with this. Mitch, I got a text from your buddy sitting right there to your right. I got a text from Bill about a month ago. So, Will, have you seen this? I am not happy Bill had your back. Like, you went into an MMA octagon with Sean Strickland.
Yeah.
And, I mean, far be it from me to offer up objective analysis, much less criticism. You took a little bit of a beating, right?
Yeah.
And Bill wasn't happy about it, man. What is this? Why are you fighting Sean Strickland?
Yeah, he had just made like a kind of a statement. You know, Sean's a very outspoken, kind of off the cuff guy, and says some pretty wild stuff. And but I've known Sean for years from training with him back at Black House years ago. We weren't, super close or anything like that. We had just known each other in passing, and he had made these statements about, he's sick and tired of hearing people talk about how badass Navy SEALs were and this and that. And, he issued a challenge. He doesn't think there's a SEAL that could survive training with him. And so I hit him up and was like, hey, let's go, let's do it. And so I came out to Vegas and showed up at his gym. And I wasn't exactly sure how it was going to go, because there was no real bad blood or animosity between us. But, you never know what you're going to get with Sean. And so he was like, all right, let's do 5-minute rounds of sparring. And I was like, oh, all right, let's do
my
it.
gosh.
And that's a long 25 minutes of MMA sparring is a long time. And so the first round, he's like, all right, let's do a warm up round. And I was like, all right, cool, sounds good. And typically when you're training with with a training partner, you're not actually like trying to hurt them or whatever. You're really just, it's sparring. You're practicing your technique and fighting and stuff.
Right.
So, but at the end of the day, it's not tickle camp, so you're practicing fighting.
So what are you saying real quick? He was trying to hurt you? I don't think he was giving you 100, right?
Yeah, no,
but he also wasn't giving you 50.
Well, that's what I was saying. So the warm-up round especially, that's kind of just like moving around, warming up. And the first punch he threw we had some heat on it, and I was like, oh, okay. And then right after, so I was like, all right, I this is how it's gonna be. And he had said to me right after he threw it, he was like, it's gonna be a long day for you. I'm gonna make you quit.
Oh,
and
no.
I was like, all right, well, so now I know exactly what I'm in for. 25 minutes of pain. And and he was saying, I don't want to knock you out.
It looked like a Navy SEAL.
Huh?
It looked like a Navy SEAL. It looked like Hell Camp or Bud Week or Hell Week. Because what I mean by that is he said, I'm going to make you quit. In the video that I saw, and I haven't seen the entire fight, you're pretty exhausted and you're pretty red. And you look like your main motivation is, I will absolutely not quit. I will not ring the bell, which you have some experience on not quitting. It looks like that became your MO in the fight.
Yeah. So like I said, right away, as soon as we started, I'm like, just, throwing a little bit of jab, kind of just moving, gaining or checking distance, normal warm up stuff. And, no real heat on anything. And, when he threw that and said that, I was like, okay, now it's pretty clear his objective is just to make me quit. He's just like wants to prove a point. And, and he said, like, I don't want to try to knock you out, because if I knock you out, that's not you quitting. I want you to quit from physical pain. Like, so he was just kicking me and punching me and just lighting me up. And, and within under a minute, he threw a hard teep, which is like a front kick, and to my solar plexus, and it knocked the wind out of me. So, I mean, I'm like, if you've ever had the wind knocked out of you, it's pretty terrible. And now imagine, a very large best fighter in the world in front of you with bad intentions for the next 24 minutes. And I was like, yeah, this is... so his only objective is to make me quit. So my only objective is to not quit. And
did you?
No. So that was at that point, I was just like, all right, shift gears in my head. And that's all I need to do is just focus on, not quitting. So, I didn't even try to fight back at that point. I just tried my best to use my energy to try to defend myself and deflect shots as best I could, so that I could endure that full 25 minutes and, and not quit. I have my own pride on the line, but I've also got, I'm carrying and representing for all the SEAL teams, essentially, whether I like it or not. And, so I'm there representing them, and there's no way that, I'm going to quit with that on the line, and I would just rather die in there. And so, and I think that was pretty apparent to people watching, that they were like, okay.
And you made it to 25.
Yeah, I did.
You made it to 25. You did not quit.
Made it the full 25 and, had a smile on my face at the end and high-fived and and it changed his mind and perspective on, and he said, well, he's like, hell, I guess technically I lost the bet or, and I stand corrected. So it ended up being
one last question.
It ended up being a good thing, a good positive outcome.
One last question, Mitch. How bad did it hurt in the days and week to follow? All those shots you took for 25 minutes.
It was fine. My leg hurt pretty good for a couple days after, but other than that, it was right afterwards was pretty rough. But I went to the UFC Apex and Sean and I went there and hung out, and I was going back and forth from the cold plunge to the hot tub. So right away I just started the recovery process, and yeah, it was fine. And then it was more like I got invited out to do Cameron Haynes' podcast and run mountains with him a couple days later. My leg was still a big bruise from here to here. And so running those mountains with him was more painful than the sparring. But no,
Bill, have you forgiven Sean?
It was a great time.
Have I forgiven Sean? Well, no. One of the things, Mitch, the first time I met Mitch, literally the first day we sparred, and I took a whooping that day. But one of the things I think about what Mitch did is he represented the SEAL community because, number one, Sean was kind of saying some things that was aggravating a lot of us. He stepped up to it. And he took one of the most prominent high-level UFC fighters on the planet in his element, and he never quit. And that's what we're about. We step up, and we don't quit. And number two is that here's the truth. Sean, he ain't never going to do the New York City SEAL swim. He's just not. Come to our element. It's a little different.
Yeah.
So my hat's off to Mitch, and that he represented the spirit of what we're about. We're going to get up there, and we're not going to quit.
Yeah, and that was one thing that that was kind of going through my head a little bit in the middle of the sparring session. When I'm halfway through, and I'm just thinking, damn, I got 15 more minutes of this. And I was like, this just sucks, but it'll pass. And it kind of reminded me of like, man, this is similar to Buds and SEAL training and just everything that we're about. It's like, it's just. Some things just suck and are hard, and you just have to endure them. And and
That's awesome.
Time does what time does. It never stops, no matter how hard something is. And if you just keep showing up and you never quit, eventually this too shall pass, and you'll get to the other side.
That's awesome.
Will, I want you to remember.
I don't know you that well. Go ahead, Bill.
I want you to remember that because this swim's going to be tough. It's frogman weather this Saturday.
All right, we're going to get into the New York City Navy SEAL swim in just a moment. But I just want to say this on the way out of that conversation. Again, like we didn't talk much last year, Mitch, but I mean, that is movie hero type stuff, man. Like I appreciate that you've been through that, Buds, and I can read about it and I can watch movies about SEAL training. But I think it's almost more accessible for people to understand. I think it is. Taking a 25-minute beating that honestly, it sounds like a minute in, you realize what's going to be really bad, and to just survive, for 24 more minutes.
I don't like to say
that's
survive.
That's the kind of stuff that happens in movies.
It's endure, because
endure.
You have to endure it,
All right.
Yeah.
I want to ask you guys both this. You guys are both, I don't use these words lightly, and I'm not, in the words of young kids here to glaze you. I feel you're plenty well celebrated and understood among the American public. So it's just really honestly my privilege and honor to get to be around you guys on something like the New York City Navy SEAL swim. But I also think it's relevant to the question I want to ask you now. And I want both of your perspectives. I'll start with you, Bill, on this story about Tim Walz. And I don't know how plugged in you are on it, But if you have anything that you want to say on this, your opinion is more valuable than mine. Is a guy who is on his resume or in his run for office saying he deployed in support of Operation Enduring Freedom, and he deployed to Italy, and, flying the flag of Command Master Sergeant when it might not be technically true that that's what his end retirement rank could be, is he doing something dishonorable?
I believe that you never want to take credit for another man's courage or another man's sacrifice. And if you say you're going downrange to serve our country and you're representing that and it's not true, I think he's a fraud. And if you're willing to lie about that, then you're probably willing to lie about anything.
Wow. I think that's where I started this show today, Bill. It's just I really hope that anybody watching understands, if you catch me in a lie, I want you to tell me. If I have somehow intentionally misled my audience in any way, I want you to tell me, because you're exactly right, Bill. A lie is one of those things that's just really hard to recover from when it comes to your integrity. If I catch you lying to me on X, why should I believe you on Y? Mitch, what do you think about this story with Tim Walz?
I think it's not surprising in the slightest bit. I mean, I think 99.9% of politicians are a worthless, scum of the earth, to be honest. And it's not surprising in the slightest bit that a politician lies or doesn't have integrity, or they are completely hollow. I think that America's politicians and government is the biggest threat that we face as a country, personally.
No, why do you think that, Mitch? And why do you think 99% of politicians are the scum of the earth? Why are they the scum of the earth, and why do they represent the biggest threat to the country?
Because I think that a lot of them are not there for the right reasons and don't care about we the people, or I think they're extremely it's the government as a whole is a place where a lot of corruption is, readily a part of it. And I think that money is the root of all evil. And I think that it's a test that a lot of people fail. And I just think that a lot of people in those positions don't have the courage to do what's right for we the people. And that's, I just truly believe, wholeheartedly that our own government is by far our biggest threat to our nation.
Bill?
One of the things I think about guys like Mitch. I think about a lot of the guys that are going to be, and women that are going to be with us in a New York City SEAL swim for the Navy SEAL Foundation. We got men and women who served overseas. You got police officers, firefighters. I call it the guardian spirit. I think the common denominator, the nucleus, the nexus that we all share is we view ourselves as protectors. And my evaluation is, I view myself as a protector. My number one thing to do, I'm the lead SEAL for this event, is to make sure my guys and gals in the water are going to be safe and it's going to be successful. I look after them. And one of the things I look at government, I said, well, what's the number one responsibility of government? It absolutely has to be the safety of our people. And I think some of the riots and some of the poor leadership in protecting people and businesses and absolutely asleep at the wheel. And I think, well, that's the core of who a veteran is. That's the core of who active duty service members are. That's the core of who police officers and firefighters are. And to me, if you're asleep at the wheel when cities in your own state are burning, and there's riots and there's looting and people are being hurt, I don't want you to be a breath away from the most powerful office on the planet.
Yeah. You're talking about what happened in Minnesota in 2020 under the guidance and leadership of Tim Walz. Mitch?
I'll say, as veterans, and I agree with Bill, I would say, the majority of veterans, active duty personnel, military, we all signed up to protect, people in our country and things that we love and care about. And, but again, that oath says all enemies, foreign and domestic, for a reason. And I think that people kind of overlook that and don't, give that enough, or they don't think that can happen here or something, and there are bad actors in our own government, and I just truly believe that. So.
Yeah, it even sounds controversial when you say it, Mitch. Like it even feels like a thing where people go like, oh my God, what are you talking about? Are you a Proud Boy or whatever they want to say? But you're exactly right. That's what's written in the founding documents. All enemies, foreign and domestic. That's the pledge. That's the oath.
Yeah.
And that's the acknowledgement that the threats to the United States are not just external. And if you want to act like that acknowledgement is radical, you're the one, the proverbial you, altering reality, not those that acknowledge the existence of this potential threat.
Yeah, and I don't think enough people understand
Go
also
ahead.
like, how our country was founded, why it was founded. It was our founding fathers overthrowing tyrannical government. And standing up this
absolutely,
and this Bill of Rights, the Constitution, all of this these were written, from the lessons learned, and those lessons were written in blood, and the First Amendment, the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment is not for hunting; it's to protect, our Constitution and our freedoms.
It's the values in our
Bill.
The values in our Constitution that are transcribed in our Declaration of Independence: life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, due process, equality. Like these are free speech. So many of these values are now, big tech is tied with sometimes with the government, and all of a sudden your right to voice your perspective and contribute to the open market of ideas is now is being prosecuted because you're not in touch with the woke ideology. So I thoroughly believe that the best way is for good men and women to get together, to speak up. And when I think of the New York City SEAL Swim, I think it's actually a huge political patriotic statement. Because here you have all these men and women who served our country, who went to war for our country, who've been on the front line with our LEO and our firefighters, and we're all coming together to show what? We love this country. We believe in this country. This country's, those values transcribed in the Constitution were beautiful then, they're beautiful now. That's the right way. And we love this country, and we're going to do everything we can to speak up for those values because they're the right values.
That was beautiful. Well said. Speaking of the New York City Navy SEAL Swim, you've got to be nervous, Bill. Like you're talking about your job is to protect, and you've got all those heads bobbing in the water. And what is the number going to be this year? Is it over 300?
It's over 300. Right now our head count's 358. So, there's a couple things we do to this. Number one is we're sending a great, proud, patriotic message out there. Another thing that we're doing is called adventure therapy. Guys, like me and Mitch, who've been overseas. Mitch is an Afghanistan vet. I'm an Iraq vet. We're getting together, doing something fun, being together. The other thing we're doing is we're raising a lot of money for the Navy SEAL Foundation that does a great job looking out for our Gold Stars and other SEALs coming in. And so these are all beautiful things. What I try to do is I got a great team with me at the New Jersey Port Authority, New Jersey State Police, PAPD, FDNY, PAPD. This event, the Coast Guard, New Jersey State Park, this event doesn't come together, Battery Park, if all those entities don't come together and look after each other. And all those entities, beautiful entities I just named, they all have a large contingent of swimmers that'll be in the water. And so what we do is, I think it's that any good organization does. We evaluate what the risks are, and then we do everything we can to mitigate those risks. So number one, we vet all the swimmers. Number 2, what safety precautions can we have? Okay, we have safety swimmer buoys that double up as life preservers. Number 3, we have tracking bracelets. Number 4, we have manual and electronic head counts at every stop. Number 3, we have several layers of perimeter for safety. One is our kayakers and jet skis. Then we have our bigger boats. They kind of 2 layers of shell for our guys. So yes, the weather is going to be tough. It's going to be a little choppy out there. It's going to be rainy. But we call this frogman weather. And it's just like Mitch when he's stepping up to one of the most premier UFC fighters on this planet to step up for our community. That's what we're doing now. We're going to come in that water. It's going to be no joke. It's going to be a hard swim. It's going to be, the water's going to be colder. It's going to be choppy. Get ready.
This is a year, I spoke to Hegseth the other day. I was like, you picked the right year, buddy, to not get in the water. So, he hated the swim when it was nice and calm and sunny. So I told him, I'm afraid we've threaded the needle between it being canceled and it being awful. So I've done some open water swims, and there's 2. So let me go through. I'm going to go through 2 concerns. All right, they're both about the water. One is swells and chop. Yeah. No, we'll get to that, Mitch. We'll get to that. First, it's the swells and the chop. Yeah. I did a swim one year. I don't know if I ever told you this, but I swam from Lanai to Maui. It's 9 miles. Ooh. I did a relay with 6 dudes. Once you get out there in the middle, and this is a channel, so it's not even the wide open ocean, but the ocean gets big. It gets big. So the ups and downs, you could literally get seasick swimming. And you're riding a roller coaster the entire time. That's not what I'm expecting. I'm expecting more wind chop constantly in my face, like I'm fighting against, like I'm Mitch Aguiar trying to last 24 minutes here in my face. Just water in my face every leg of the swim. Is that what we're talking about with the water?
Yeah, you're going to look at some of that. And one of the things for guys and gals who haven't done some open water swimming is when you're swimming and you're getting that chop, it's kind of like getting slapped in your ear over and over. And that's where your equilibrium is. And so sometimes guys get a little disoriented, they get a little nauseated, and it messes with actually their cognitive reasoning out there. So, one of the things I'm going to try to tell the guys is, hey, slow down a little bit and get your guiding, because you're getting tossed around out there. You're more, inclined to start zigzagging, because it's gonna be fun.
Just hold your breath and then swim underwater.
Then that brings us to the second problem, Mitch, which is the water quality. We literally got an email yesterday about bacteria and pollution, telling us it would be okay. I mean, I don't know what the Bill Brown scale of okay is, but this is the Hudson River.
I would imagine after rain like this, it probably gets a little extra dirty.
Well, guys, I have 3 nipples and I glow in the dark, and it's all good.
Those started after the first year we did the swim.
Yep. Yeah. Hey, so we got a couple things on
all right. Well, I want to do this, Bill, real quick. On the phone right now is a viewer, a listener, a longtime member of the Willisha, our community here on the Will Cain Show. His name is Brent Siriano. Brent and I've never met in person. I've seen Brent on social media, and I got a notice from him. He did it. He signed up. He will be in the New York City Navy SEAL swim this year. So, Brent, you just heard the water quality and the challenge. How excited are you this year for the SEAL swim?
I mean, what an amazing pep talk! Holy cow! I mean, it's like my college baseball coach told me, the weather can't beat you. So that's the mindset I'm going in, man. Let's do it.
It's going to be fun.
Are you a swimmer, Brent?
I was a baseball player. I've been a swimmer for the last year, actually preparing for this swim. I started last August, and I grew up in Florida. I've been in the water my whole life, man. But it's a difference between swimming recreationally in the pool versus getting after it. To the point where I had to hire a triathlete coach to get me straight for the last 7-8 months to be prepared for this thing, man. So it's
really.
Good.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, let me start with this. I'm proud of you, man. I can't believe you listened to this show. You heard us talk about a year ago, and you said, I got to do this. And you put a year into this. I can't imagine how disappointed you were when it was like, is it going to go or is it not go? My brother's been training. My brother will be doing it with us.
Sweet.
And he's been training for 3 or 4 months. But, man, I think it's awesome, Brent, that you're going to do this. And I would say swim beside me, but I'm going to blow you away in my wake.
I'm sure. I tried to draft you, man, but it's that quick. I'm just trying to keep up.
My training regimen is way different this year. All right, last. You got any advice, Bill, or Mitch, for Brent here before we see him on Saturday?
Yeah, I'm actually going to quote Mitch. If you think you're not going to make it, just take a big gulp of water and die.
Well, here's what I would say. And I'll say this while you're still on the phone, Brent, and then I'll continue my conversation with Mitch Aguiar and Bill Brown here. I did it last year, and I did it in part out of selfish reasons, meaning I want to know that I can do this. I want to do hard things. I want to challenge myself. And that was a really fun part of it. And I got to do it, honestly, almost as cool as that day was the day that Bill and I did a trial swim together in July, about a month ahead of time. And you look up and you're swimming under the Statue of Liberty, right? I mean, it's hard to project words through this media to explain what that's like. But what I'm getting at is that at some point during the entire experience, it stops becoming about you. It stops becoming about that physical challenge and what you accomplish. And you start looking around and realize what you're a part of. And you're swimming under the Statue of Liberty. You're stopping at Ellis Island. And then when you finally arrive into Manhattan and you grab an American flag and you run through the streets of Manhattan to the applause of a crowd, the sirens of a fire engine, and you arrive at the 9/11 memorial with a bunch of Navy SEALs, it doesn't even matter what you just did personally, individually, selfishly, or even as an accomplishment. It's about what you're a part of. And I think you're about to experience that, Brent.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
It's bigger for sure, and I'm just humbled to be a part of not only this experience, but around, I guess, gentlemen I would consider men and women, heroes growing up. And so I'm excited to be a part of this, and hopefully I can take every moment of it in versus worrying about the swim, because it is a lot bigger than myself.
Exactly. All right, man. We get a beer afterwards. I'll see you before and after the race, Brent. I appreciate you, man. Proud of you and appreciate you. Thank you, Brent Sirianni.
Yeah, man. Thanks, man. See you Saturday.
Thank you, Brent.
All right. See you. Bill, would you give us the significance of everything I just described? Why do we stop 3 times? Why do we do 100 push-ups? Why do we do 20 it's 22, right? Pull-ups at every stop.
Yeah, it's the symbology of the cornerstones of what our nation, its fabric is really about. Statue of Liberty, that torch of freedom. So we're doing 100 push-ups, 22 pull-ups to honor our nation's freedoms and civil liberties, some of the things we talked about here on this show. Then we're going to swim to Ellis Island, and we're going to do 100 push-ups and 22 pull-ups to honor our nation's diversity, which is a beautiful thing, to honor all the men and women and families who came to our country seeking a better life, which is a beautiful thing. We'll pop in the water again. Then we're going to grab flags and we're going to hold them really high, and we're going to swim through New York City to the World Trade Center. As we enter the World Trade Center, FDNY, PAPD, NYPD pipers are going to be playing for us. We get into the World Trade Center, Ground Zero, the first responder statue. We're going to do 100 push-ups, 22 pull-ups to honor all those who've fallen for our great nation, all those who put it on the line for our country, all those lost on 9/11. It's going to be a beautiful event. We're going to have over 31 gold stars this year. I'm so proud. Will, thank you so much for you championing this event, for Fox championing this event. We send such a positive patriotic message of unity for our country, something we really need right now. Because you know what? This country is beautiful. We're beautiful, and we're going to let it shine.
That's awesome. I wouldn't be able to end this conversation without at least indulging my curiosity really quickly here. Mitch, every time I meet one of you guys, I've talked to Bill about his life, why he chose to be a Navy SEAL. I did a whole series on this, I believe it was a year ago or so, a Warrior series on the Will Cain Show, where I talked to Delta, I talked to Marine Raiders, I talked to Special Forces, Green Beret, Army, and I talked to Navy SEALs. And one of the things I'm always blown away by is, honestly, the diversity that Bill just referenced, meaning all you guys are of different sizes. Like, there's no Navy SEAL size, I've learned. Mm-hmm. And there is no Navy SEAL personality type. There's quiet guys, there's big personality guys. And the only commonality I've ever found is the thing that you did in sitting in there against Sean Strickland. It's just the only commonality is I will not quit. So I just want to ask you, Mitch, like, what made you want to be a Navy SEAL?
Yeah, well, I'm certainly different than most SEALs in that aspect because I didn't even know what a Navy SEAL was when I joined. I joined right out of high school. I was just bored and joined the Navy, and my recruiter was like, "Hey, do you want to join the Navy?" And I was like, "Sure, why not?" And he was like, "Oh, you look like you're in good shape. You want to be a SEAL?" And I was like, "I guess, sure." And he was like, "Yeah." So I had no idea what a SEAL was. I had never run further than a mile before I went to signed up for Buds, and they just said that this was like the top job, and I was like, all right, let's do it.
He did it for the girls.
That's awesome. Well, for what it's worth, Mitch, I'm smashing reds and smashing greens on almost a daily basis. So,
good. That's awesome.
That's
Happy
Mitch.
to hear that.
That's Mitch's business. It's a supplement. It gives you the greens, the reds, all the stuff you don't like eating.
Yeah.
I throw it into a smoothie
Supplements.
with some protein shake.
MASFsupplements.com.
Massive supplements. He's got it on his shirt. There you go. Check out Mitch's business. I don't give fake endorsements. I do. I do it almost every day. I do that and Field of Greens. Those are my two. I go back and forth on whatever I need every other day.
You might not make it out of that water if I hear that again. Smashing greens.
Well, they're paying for this. They're paying for this conversation right now.
You're going to be paying for it later.
Field of Greens. Woo!
No, smashing greens, smashing reds, massive supplements. You should check out Mitch's stuff. And I hope you check us out on Fox and Friends on Saturday. We'll be doing the new and Sunday for that matter. It's going to be both days. You'll see us do the after package, the after effects on Sunday of the New York City Navy SEAL Swim in support of the Navy SEAL Foundation. It's my second year in a row. And if you're watching or listening and you, like our listener Brent, are inspired, there's plenty of ways. You can get in touch with me, you get in touch with Bill, and we want to have you here next year to do the same thing.
And
fellas, it's always an honor.
Can I just throw out?
Yeah, go ahead, Mitch.
So on Sunday after, I know not everybody can participate in the swim. There's a qualifying standards, all that stuff, and I know a lot of people want to get involved somehow, whatever. This is aside from the swim, but myself, Kaj Larson, Ian Schnelly, Jeff Gum, and Central Park Joe are going to be meeting in Central Park for a workout Sunday at noon. So if anybody wants to join us for a free workout, no strings attached, whatever, you guys can just come and hit a workout in Central Park with us.
There you go.
I'll have the
or
details on my social media at Mitch Aguiar on Instagram.
Or show up to Ground Zero and hang out with us during the closing ceremonies. And we all have a beer as well. We want you guys listening and watching involved in this as well. It's an honor. It's a privilege. Always, fellas. Thanks for coming into the Will Cain Show. I'll see you on Saturday morning.
Thank you, Will.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, guys. All right. There they go. I mean it. I don't want this one to be a show. I don't want to just talk at you. I want this to be a community. I want to talk with you and experience things that are great in this life with you. So get in touch with me or Bill Brown or the Will Cain Show if next year you want to be a part of the New York City Navy SEAL Swim. If not, tune in on Saturday and Sunday to Fox and Friends. All right, coming up, it's the 1-year anniversary since Lahaina burned to the ground. I was there a year ago. I was there last week. I take you inside the streets today of Lahaina as they mark the 1-year anniversary with thousands paddling out into the Pacific Ocean. That's next on The Will Cain Show.
It's time to take the quiz.
5 questions, 5 minutes a day, 5 days a week.
History, pop culture, science, sports, civics. How much do you know? Let's find out.
Who was the first person to walk on the moon?
Jackson or something?
Neil Armstrong.
Take the quiz every weekday at thequiz.fox and then listen to the quiz podcast to find out how you did.
Play, share, and of course, listen to the quiz right now at thequiz.fox.
Gunnar Henderson and the Orioles battle the Rays.
Grand slam!
Or the Cubs
You gotta be kidding me!
take on the White Sox. baseball night in America, Saturday at 7 Eastern on Fox. Saturday, it's Houston, it's Boston, it's Fenway Park. Jose Altuve leads the Astros against Rafael Devers and the Red Sox. Saturday at 4 Eastern on FS1.
I'm Emily Campagno. This month, the Fox True Crime Podcast presents Crimes on Campus.
More pledges, more money, more colleges, until it was a multi-million-dollar drug network.
You'll be joining me on college and university campuses all across the country as I share chilling stories of scandal, corruption, and murder.
Brutalized 5 students over 3 nights.
New episodes available every Tuesday this month. Listen and follow at foxtruecrime.com.
August 8th, 2023, Lahaina, Maui, burns to the ground. August 8th, 2024, the 1-year anniversary, the biggest paddle out in my memory. Thousands paddle out into the ocean on surfboards and in boats to pay remembrance what happened 1 year ago. And I'll now bring you the images of where we stand today in Lahaina, Maui. It is the Will Cain Show, streaming live at foxnews.com, on the Fox News YouTube channel and the Fox News Facebook page. Terrestrial radio, market to market, coast to coast, from New York to San Francisco, Dallas, KRLD 1080, up to the upper Midwest. And always on demand at Apple, Spotify, or on YouTube. Speaking of YouTube, Jonathan Eaton on YouTube comments that Tim Walz left to run for office months before they knew they were being deployed. I don't think that's true, Jonathan. I think that the timeline suggests it was right before deployment that he left. But I'm happy to have the timeline laid out for us, and we can double-check who's right or who's wrong on that. I do know this, Jonathan. Some of his fellow service members in that Minnesota National Guard are the ones calling out his embellishment of his record. And, Jonathan, you may just be pointing out he left and still calls himself a guy who carried a weapon of war or deployed in support of Operation Enduring Freedom. Joseph Felix comments on YouTube, Donald Bone Spurs Trump. Eliziar Feliciano says, J.D. Vance equals a Trump mini-me. Georgia Nelson says, Harris Waltz equals freedom. SFL says, I have never seen so much happiness in this country since Kamala stepped into the ring. Republican here, also voting Harris. It's such a positive vibe, not gloom and doom of Trump's BS lies over and over. Those are some of the comments on YouTube. I always welcome those who have a disagreement with me into the comment section or into the Will Cain Show. Let me just talk about the Bone Spurs comment for just a moment. There have been many a politician who have been criticized for not serving for whatever reason. Many a politician on both sides of the aisle, and many a politician who have been elected to the presidency of the United States. That's not what we're talking about. Tim Walz served for 24 years. What we're talking about is if it's dishonorable to embellish your record, to lie about what you have done. And you can offer up a comment on the internet. I offer up the comment of 2 Navy SEALs, and Bill Brown and Mitch Aguiar, who said, it is just short of stolen valor. It is fraud. It is not right. So I guess everyone's entitled to their opinion. Maybe not every opinion is of equal value. It is 7 a.m. in Hawaii. Later this morning, they will have a paddle out on the Pacific Ocean in remembrance of the fires that burned down almost the entirety of Lahaina, Maui 1 year ago. A paddle out is where people come in, they get on surfboards, they get in canoes, they get in kayaks, they take big boats out, and they all gather around in the ocean, usually in a gigantic circle. It's done for funerals. They take leis, they'll throw that in the water, they'll splash water into the air, they'll pray. And it promises to be a very, very heavy and well-attended moment today in Lahaina, Maui. We've talked this week about what's happened there. It's been an important story to me personally, and I think to the Fox News Channel and to the Will Cain Show, because I asked you all to care. I asked you all to give back, and some 30,000 people did. Made a donation to our GoFundMe that raised over $2.6 million and granted out over 210 $12,000 grants to people that lost their homes. I want to show you a little bit. I want to take you in because I was just in Lahaina last week. And I want to show you a little bit about what it looks like, share with you what it's like here 1 year later. I've shared this with some friends who care, and they're always a little bit taken aback. I think young establishment James here on our show, when I sent this in, replied, wow. But it is still devastation. If you're watching on YouTube or Facebook, what you see is two things. You see hussed out, burned buildings there, and you see a green tree. So what's happened in Lahaina is almost 100% of residential properties have been cleared down to a dirt lot. And that is progress. It takes a lot of work to get rid of steel and rebar and burned out husks of buildings. Commercial properties have only been cleared to something like 70%. These are images of Front Street. You can see the ocean beyond. Those used to be restaurants, historic buildings over 100 years old. What you're looking at right there was a restaurant, if anyone's ever been to Lahaina, called Bubba Gump's, that is now actually representing progress because it's nothing but a dirt lot. There's a restaurant called Cheeseburger in Paradise that some people will be familiar with. It was literally sitting over the ocean. None of those along the wall will be rebuilt. They'll never come back. But what you're seeing on your screen is a town that's gone. It's just gone. What's left of Lahaina, I would suggest to you, is something like 20, 30%, maybe 15, 20%. Because fire's weird. It's super weird. Out of nowhere in a neighborhood where everything burned, one house will stand. Out of a neighborhood where every house is standing, randomly, 2 houses burned down. Wind, sparks, fire, and all this led to people who, I don't know if they have malintentions or willingness to believe that somehow that added up to conspiracy, the randomness of fire. I told you earlier this week I was driving through, I think we have the images of a neighborhood called Wakuli, and you can see basically there's just nothing there. It's all empty. And I met a guy named Earl Kukahiko. Earl is one of the big families in Hawaii, the Kukahikos. And he was sitting there in his empty lot. And I got out and I went and said, hey, Earl, I'm Will Cain. And he and his family, many members of the family, are recipients of the fund that you helped create, and gave me the biggest hug that I've ever gotten in my life. And it was one of the most touching things I'll ever be a part of. And he told me all about all of his plans. He texted me last night. We got the plans. We're getting the permits. We're rebuilding. And that spirit is ever present, man. It's everywhere. Just resilience, but not just resilience. Not just like people. There's Earl Kukahiko on your screen, along with Kakoa Mawat and Trixie Gaynor. All three different families all lost their homes. Trixie Gaynor, by the way, on your screen. Quick story on Trixie. I got a letter in the mail from a girl from Pennsylvania, 13 years old, who made bracelets after she heard about what happened in Maui. And she sold the bracelets in her grandmother's store. And she sold $100 worth of bracelets. And she sent me the $100. I said, Will, I know you're the right place to put this. I'm like, oh my God, how awesome and how heavy. Like, it's almost easier to give away thousands than it is to give away 100. You know, how do you go up to somebody and say, hey, here's $100? Didn't know what to do. So on that screen was a guy named Kakoa Mawat, and I've become very close with Kakoa. He's one of the guys. I said, I love you, man, too. I said, man, you'll help me out. He's driving the ATV. And that's when he introduced me to Trixie. So what ended up happening is Trixie has a 13-year-old daughter named Momi. Trixie and Momi lost Trixie's uncle in the fire. He stayed in the house. He died. One of the 102 that died. So Momi lost her great uncle. In Hawaii, everybody's an uncle, by the way, but this is a blood uncle. So the $100 from the young girl in Pennsylvania went to a 13-year-old girl in Pennsylvania, went to a 13-year-old girl in Maui who lost her home and lost a member of her family in those fires. It's just incredible. Everything is incredible. Humanity is incredible. The human spirit is incredible. We are incredible. We can be. You know? We truly can. I've seen it. And by the way, if that doesn't represent joy and positivity, I don't know what does. Do I have to laugh? Do I have to give you a fake laugh, Colin Coward? If that doesn't represent joy and positivity, I don't know what does. And I'm going to try to bring you images of what joy and positivity looks like 1 year later as they have this 1 year anniversary of the fires in Maui. All right, there's some images. I wanted to share that with you. One last thing. There was an image you saw there of a tree that's green. Not a big deal, honestly, to the local population. But it is a symbol for many. The banyan tree in downtown Lahaina at the harbor survived. What looked like a charred, burned out husk of a tree is now green again. It survived. Also maybe a symbol of resilience and vitalization, being able to rebuild and hope and joy and positivity. That's going to do it for us today here on the Will Cain Show. I always appreciate you, not just watching the show, but becoming a member of our community. So hit subscribe, jump in the comments, come join us on the Navy SEAL swim. I will see you again next time.